You've probably read the very first sentence of the Bible more times than you can count. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's one of the most famous verses in all of Scripture. But there's one detail that almost never gets explained. In the original Hebrew, this opening sentence is far richer than it appears in English. In fact, some biblical scholars have spent years studying just these first few words. So here's the question. When Genesis says in the beginning of what? Time, the universe, human history? Or is there something even deeper hidden in the original text? To answer that, we have to go back thousands of years and take a closer look at the ancient Hebrew in which Genesis was written. Genesis is the very first book of the Bible. Its English name comes from the ancient Greek translation, but in Hebrew the book is called Bereshit, which simply means in the beginning, the very first word of the book itself. Traditionally, Genesis has been attributed to Moses. Regardless of the discussions about how the book was compiled, it was written for people who lived among nations with very different ideas about how the world began. Back then, the Egyptians, Babylonians, and many other ancient cultures believed the universe came into existence through battles between gods or through the birth of new deities. In many of those stories, chaos itself was considered a divine force. The gods fought one another, and the world was the result of those conflicts. But Genesis begins in a completely different way. There is no battle. There is no rival god. There is no struggle for power. The story simply begins with God already there, and then everything else begins. Right from the opening sentence, Genesis presents an idea that was revolutionary in the ancient world. There is one sovereign God who created everything. The opening line in Hebrew reads, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. The very first word is Bereshit. It's usually translated as in the beginning. That's a faithful translation, but it can make us think of a single moment in time. In Hebrew, the idea is a little broader than that. The word comes from the root rosh, which means head, first, beginning, or origin. It marks the start of something, not just a moment on a timeline, but the beginning of an entire sequence of events. Next comes the verb bara. This word deserves special attention. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, bara is used exclusively with God as its subject. That doesn't necessarily mean it always describes creation out of nothing, but it does refer to a unique kind of creative action that belongs to God alone. It's a verb reserved for divine activity. Then we come to Elohim, one of the most common names for God in the Old Testament. Interestingly, even though Elohim has a plural form in Hebrew, it's paired with a singular verb. From the very first line of the Bible, the grammar points to one God acting as the creator. Finally, we read, the heavens and the earth. To an ancient Hebrew audience, this wasn't simply a reference to the sky above and the ground below. It was a figure of speech that meant the entire universe, everything that exists. It's similar to saying, from beginning to end. In other words, when Genesis says God created the heavens and the earth, it's declaring that He created all things. Some scholars also point out that the grammar of Bereshit allows another possible reading. When God began to create. You'll find that wording in some modern Bible translations and academic commentaries. Even so, the vast majority of translations continue to use in the beginning, because both readings communicate the same central truth. God is the creator. The main purpose of this verse was never to explain the scientific mechanics of how the universe came into existence. Its purpose is to reveal who stands behind creation. Today, many people read Genesis expecting it to function like a science textbook. Others dismiss it as nothing more than poetry. But the first readers were asking a very different question. Who rules this world? Who is greater than the sun, the moon, the stars, and every force of nature? Genesis gives a simple answer. There is one creator. Everything else is creation. That message is just as powerful today as it was thousands of years ago. It reminds us that the universe didn't come into existence because of competing gods, divine chaos, or cosmic conflict. Whatever conversations we have today about the details of creation, Genesis begins by establishing one foundational truth. God existed before everything else, before history, before nations, before humanity, before time itself as we know it. Maybe that's why the Bible never begins by trying to prove that God exists. It simply starts with Him already there. And from that point on, the entire biblical story unfolds. So the next time you read the words, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," remember that they're much more than an introduction. They're a declaration of who God is. While many ancient cultures told stories about gods fighting for power, Genesis introduces one sovereign creator who brings all of reality into existence. That very first sentence sets the stage for everything that follows in the Bible. And perhaps that's exactly why it has captivated readers for thousands of years. If this video helped you see Genesis 1:1 in a whole new way, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves exploring the Bible. And let me know in the comments which passage you'd like to see explained next.